Welcome back to the final installment of my recap of the 2019 movies. This will be a little different from before. I introduce you to the Eh-mmys, an awards show given to the films that were neither the best nor the worst, varying degrees of quality, and I have 10 awards to give out, so let's get started. Low expectations, high enjoyment. For the movie that I expected to be bad, or wasn't even on my radar, there's quite a few to choose from. Cold Pursuit looked like a generic Liam Neeson vehicle trying to recapture the Taken franchise crowd, but it ended up being a pretty entertaining dark comedy. Alita Battle Angel had me skeptical after the first trailer, but its characters and style won me over as the film carried on. I've never gotten into Dragon Ball besides watching the abridged series and some clips on Facebook, but Broly is excellent in animation and action. But I have to give the award to a film I had a lot of fun with that I fully expected to not like. Ready or Not. I don't know exactly why I had bad vibes from this film, but by the end I couldn't recommend it enough, especially for people who love a 90-minute dark comedy thriller. Better Than I Thought, but only just. Unlike the Low Expectations, High Enjoyment award, this one is for movies that, although were better than I thought they'd be, they were only okay or passable. Films like Zombieland Double Tap, that came out about 6 years after the genre was worn down to the point where it's almost tiresome to even think about another zombie movie. Detective Pikachu is a cute family film with Ryan Reynolds sass that you'd expect, but the plot is so tropey that you'll predict pretty much everything if you've ever seen a movie like twice. Then there's the winner of this award, Ad Astra. I may sound like an impatient movie viewer, but Jesus Christ, this film is a drag for the first hour. But the last 30 minutes sucked me into where I felt like the slog of the first half was kinda worth it.
The world awaits our discovery, my son.
What you see is what you get. Just like the award reads, these are films that just by knowing the synopsis, there's very little you get from outside of that. Isn't It Romantic could have been really fun and interesting if it didn't become the overdone rom-com that's making fun of the entire time. Even if that is the joke, that still isn't very funny on its own. Brightburn does sneak the win this year, though for basically being able to explain the plot with 2 words, Evil Superman. Some of the sequences are pretty well done, and the creep factor can get you sometimes, but outside of what I just said, that's the whole movie. It's simple, which isn't inherently bad, but it's a kind of simple I wish they'd went a little further into, since we've seen so much more in-depth actual Superman stories where he's the bad guy. Indie-rific. Now for some appreciation for the smaller films out there. Fighting with My Family is a great drama following a family of wrestlers inspired by the events of the daughter's life. I have a soft spot for this, not just how much I like wrestling, but specifically the wrestler it's centered around. But even if you're not well versed in the wrestling world, it's still hilarious and dramatic, like wrestling. The Dead Don't Die is a film that has a lot to say, but sometimes it handles a few talking points noticeably better than others. Just a really oddball film that gets lost in its own self-awareness every now and then, but I respect the ridiculousness it does go for. Speaking of ridiculousness, Midsommar is masterfully directed and gives no fucks for sensitivity. From the guy who brought you Hereditary, another fantastic piece, although I pretty much knew what to expect going in, the extent the movie goes to at times still pulls the rug out from under me. Should have been a TV show. Only one movie really feels like it could be in this category, but I wanted to just add it on here. Captive State as a concept had me hooked, especially from the trailer. The suspense is palpable, and you want to care for the characters. The issue comes with the fact that there's so many people and perspectives you go through, and so much jumping around. If you broke this up into a miniseries, and had more quality time with our diverse group of leads, decisions and sacrifices would have the full impact the movie is trying to give you. For the kids. Dora and the Lost City of Gold was surprisingly watchable, The Missing Link was one of the most laid-back adventure movies I've seen, and Laika always brings you amazing stop-motion animation. But a movie I saw on a whim actually takes the victory. The Kid Who Would Be King is a film I could see myself loving growing up. An adventure film about medieval magic and a group of kids becoming the saviors of our world that have to defend their home from the forces of evil by holding their last stand in a school with armor forged out of whatever they could gather with the help of Merlin the Wizard. It's ridiculous and fun for any small one you got around the house. Most underwhelming finale. What movie this year tried to end on a bang but instead turned out to be a whimper? Well, thank God there were plenty to have its own category. Glass was a trilogy that had a great setup and could have been the last big break Shyamalan needed to regain his tarnished filmography. It Chapter 2 becomes repetitive and way too long to almost becoming boring in a film filled with scares, but obviously, Star Wars Rise of Skywalker wins the award. I liked Force Awakens, enjoyed Last Jedi enough, even though there's plenty to not like about it, but this movie doesn't know what it's doing and it feels like you're watching a writing meeting being discussed live in front of you. The conclusion isn't satisfying and feels almost as rushed as Game of Thrones was. Almost. Superhero Solo of the Year. Another year, another oversized haul of superhero movies. Personally, I'm not so tired of it yet. So let's see which solo hero put out their best efforts. Joker had an interesting take on being more grounded and going more high art drama, with some heavily inspired story beats. Spider-Man Far From Home was another fun MCU Spider-Man affair that explored more of Mary Jane's character, and Captain Marvel tried. Moving on to the winner, Shazam. With lighthearted fun you'd expect from a character that looks like this, mixed in with some touching family moments, lots of laughs, and the occasional dismembering from the embodiments of the 7 deadly sins. What's not to love? Animated Sequel of the Year. What else is Hollywood full of besides superhero movies? Sequels. And we had a whole lot of animated ones this year. Secret Life of Pets 2 was about as forgettable as you'd expect. Frozen 2 was unfortunately pretty underwhelming. The Lego Movie 2, the second one, was funny and energetic like the first one, but the story didn't grab me like the original. Toy Story 4 I felt was an overall pretty decent outing by Pixar. Might even be the Toy Story with the most laughs, but I do have some bias with the winner, and it's How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World. It may be the weakest of the trilogy, but at least the conclusion is satisfying and worth the wait. Most Justified Remake. Just like superhero movies and sequels, you can't have a Hollywood checklist complete without some remakes. But what was the remake that felt most justified? The one that showed it was trying to be its own thing. Lady and the Tramp? They're not cartoons, but it still banks on you seeing the original, so when they make plot callbacks, they hope you can make the connection for the context without establishing it in the movie itself. Child's Play? Felt like another generic horror movie that has very little reason to exist. Pet Sematary? Well, maybe. The first hour wasn't so goddamn slow, when we all know what's gonna happen. There's slow burn horror, and then there's this. And this is boring. So by process of elimination, I'm gonna have to give it to Dumbo. With the original Dumbo story being fulfilled in the first 40 minutes, the next hour of the film is just its own thing. Is it good? Well, not really. Can the children act? About as good as 2 planks of wood that also really can't act. Is it watchable? I guess. So here you go, Dumbo. You win it by default, which is still a win.
Fly, baby of mine.
And now for something a little extra. A participation award for the film that almost made it to the worst of list, but just squeezed by. Gemini Man was a bland 90s movie that's best selling point was that the Fresh Prince and the Stale Prince fight each other. Sometimes the effect looks good, other times not so much. The film is dull and becomes nonsensical if the villain wanted to actually have his problem taken care of. But the 11th worst movie of the year, Godzilla King of the Monsters. Sure, the monster fights are insane, fantastical, and amazing CGI work, but goddamn, these humans are some of the dumbest people I've ever had to deal with. The fact that 2/3 of the movie is focused on them is what really drags it down. The monster parts may be fun, but it's not enough to make up for the fact that most of the film is annoying to sit through. So there you have it, 2019 wrapped up with a nice bow. Next video I'm actually going to be able to make a new What I Saw This Month, now that I can rent a fair amount of films that were on my list, so I'll catch you guys with that soon.